Well, Derek Burney is a former Canadian ambassador to the United States and played a key role in Canada's negotiations for the original NAFTA. He's now a senior strategic advisor at Norton Rose Fulbright. He's with me now in the studio. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Thanks for coming to speak with me. You listen to Mr. Pence and Justin Trudeau. What's your level of optimism that we will get a ratification of this new NAFTA?
Well, let me first say I think the biggest significance of his visit is that he came. I don't think there was much surprise to what was discussed from what we've heard, but I think it was important that the Vice President came. You know, we haven't had a visit by the President,
right,
and that's the first time in a long time the American President hasn't come here, other than the G7 summit, which is better forgotten, perhaps than remembered. You know, I don't think he answered the question that the Canadians are asking. How confident are they that it's going to be approved by the U.S. Congress? Not just in light of opposition by the Democrats that we've heard for some months, but in light of what happened yesterday, and raised the profile of the possibility of impeachment. Not that that's going to happen. I'm just saying it's going to be a distraction. As long as they pursue investigations, it's going to be difficult, in my judgment, for them to get to any substance.
So what does the Canadian side do? I mean, this is the debate that's underway in this country too. The Prime Minister has introduced legislation to ratify the deal. It's before the House now. But I guess the big question is, does Canada go ahead and ratify if the Americans haven't?
Oh, I think we do, yeah. I mean, don't forget, even with the original FTA, or well, maybe it was the original NAFTA, I can't keep them straight. On one of them, the Americans were very concerned that we were going to drag our feet on ratification. And we actually did it a year and a half ahead of them. So it's not unusual that they get a little out of sequence. And I think the good news is that as long as the new one isn't approved, the old one remains in effect. And despite the fact that the Vice President was at pains to say that the new one is an improvement in every respect over the old one.
Yeah, what did you think when you heard that?
I thought
this is in every way is better than NAFTA.
I thought hyperbole is what I thought. And, you know, that's to be consistent with the reason for getting out of NAFTA. When they declared that that was the worst trade deal ever, there's no way they could say that they salvaged 80% of it in the new agreement, which is what in effect they've done.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You've seen these kinds of partisan trade fights before in the United States. You've been close to the action. And so, in your view, is there a real possibility this deal gets torpedoed by the Democrats in Congress, and at least in part? We know they may have some legitimate concerns around labor standards and pharmaceuticals, but they're also saying they don't want to give any kind of a win to Donald Trump.
That's the real reason, Peter. The real reason that it may not go forward has nothing to do with the substance of the agreement. I think by and large, although there are some who oppose any trade agreement in Congress, I think by and large the substance is acceptable, with perhaps some side letters to address concerns about labor and the environment. The real issue is whether the Democrats are going to give this president a victory on anything for the 2020 election. People are pretty optimistic, saying that yes, you know, saner heads will prevail. I'm not there yet.
What did you hear? I mean, one of the things Canada has been pushing with the Americans is stronger support for Canada's position in suggestions it's getting bullied by China, and saying, look, we have the arrest of the Huawei executive in detention in Vancouver for U.S. extradition and the process that's going to come up.
In a $12 million mansion, by the way, as opposed to the cell that our guys are in.
Right. And the two Canadians detained in China. Did you hear something from Mike Pence that says, look, we're doing all we can and we're really there at Canada's side helping out?
The only hint at something different, as opposed to new, is he did point out that President Trump is going to be meeting the president of China at the G20 meeting. And I think we are banking, I'm assuming Canada is banking on the fact that Trump will raise that issue with the president of China. Since nobody in China is answering our calls, we've got to get a better messenger to give the message. So that's the one takeaway I got from his answer in the press conference.
Is it complicated at all by then the whole question of Huawei and 5G? The Americans want to ban it. They're expecting their allies to do the same thing. We heard the Prime Minister say, look, we'll make a decision based on evidence and the advice of our security agents, that it won't be political if we do. And yet, we hear lots of stuff that it could be part of the trade conversation between the U.S. and China, and what happens to the Huawei executive.
Well, I think we're marking time. I mean, the government's subjecting it to a review. A review can last as long as we want it to last. Obviously, the government is not going to do something that's going to make the situation with China worse than it already is. I assume the government is hoping that in the context of the US-China trade negotiations, there will be a finesse of some kind that will deal with the Huawei personal issue as opposed to the technology issue. That's a hope. That's not a prophecy. But that's the only solution. I mean, if the Chinese are dug in saying they are not going to reopen normal relations with Canada until this woman is let go, there's not a lot of room for maneuver there.
Let's finish on this and come back to the trade deal just to finish. Should we be concerned at all that if the process gets totally bogged down in the United States and ratification is put off till who knows when, that we could see the president revert to one of his previous postures, which is to say, if we can't get it through, then I'm dumping it. It's done. Is that a serious concern?
That's a worst case scenario, but even then you have to remember you can't do it unilaterally. Right. I mean, we should never mistake the fact that the American president doesn't have the unilateral power that Donald Trump would like him to have. Right. Congress is the ultimate authority on trade. So he can no more jettison an existing trade agreement than he can approve a trade agreement on his own. He needs Congress either way. So yes, he could threaten it, and yes, he could actually demand that it be done. But Congress would have to approve it before it could be done. So I think it is a fallback.
All right, Derek Burney, always good to talk to you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Peter.